And the context of your thinking, your context of your considering is going to be most likely, um, I say, a function of how your life's been going for the last 15 minutes. And your ability to listen and your ability to take on board an idea or a concept might have a lot to do with an unfinished conversation that you had earlier that gets dragged into this conversation. I mean, have you ever walked into a situation with somebody where they immediately bite your head off? Well, they don't actually bite your head off, but we say that a lot, don't we?
Right. Well, and the other type where I've had the situation where people thought I would get along famously with someone, and it was the exact opposite from the word go. You know, our personalities just clashed instantly. You know, it was a long time ago. It was probably decades ago now, but I'll never forget that incident. It's like, oh, you two will get along famously, and from the word go. But and that's energy too. So you can sense somebody's energy, and then you bring it with you. So consider you like I was in a Zoom conference, and the show always starts basically often we'll start with we don't know what each other had for breakfast. So don't assume that you know what the rest of what everybody's bringing into this conversation and how they got there and what their day's been like.
Oh, absolutely. And so here's the really cool part about all of that. We don't train people. I mean, when Ken Caputo says the theory is that we are human beings, but we fundamentally suck at it.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's good at being a human being until they really put some energy and effort into it. And I think that's equally so if they are in a community or a culture or an environment where they don't feel safe or they don't feel loved or they don't have their basic survival needs met. If they are feeling threatened, like their life or their health is in danger, that's going to completely color anybody's listening and their ability to hear the words that you're saying. They're going to immediately go into the interpret, to stay alive mode, or interpret to get even mode, or interpret to you fill in the blank mode. So fundamentally, somebody in the conversation um, has to be an adult. I'm saying bring in more than it takes to be a 12-year-old in a conversation. Someone in that conversation has to be, that kind of listener, and even listening to their own speaking. And so if there's something that, we're starting to break down and the conversation is talking past each other, that's a wasted bit of time you'll never get back. It's part of your life that is in the rearview mirror. It's not memorable. It wasn't really great. And every once in a while, somebody can just say, hey, let's be considerate of each other. Or considering what you just said. So it makes it really clear that you're not about to spout a fact. You're really going to take a moment. And I think we famously parrot back to each other sometimes in other words. Do you know what I mean?
That's where I've seen groups form too, where the leader or somebody will, like you said, consider what's going on and then bring it back, reel it back in, make a statement and or ask a question and say, "I'll go first," because a lot of people don't know where the conversation is supposed to go. So if you give that example and you're there for a common cause or you're just there for a common conversation, but to consider everybody and to start by saying, I will lead you and show you, where I think this, where this conversation might be more beneficial. So I'll start and then you follow.
Yeah. So there's a whole. I mean, we've only been talking now for, I don't know, approximately 20 minutes, and there's a whole lot of work that can be done between people just considering consideration. And
Hmm.
I love those types of concepts that you can take on board. And some people will when they're done with this podcast, will meditate on considering consideration for a little while. and see how that makes your body feel and see where it shows up and what sort of sensation you get. And also, to take a moment and reflect a little bit on how things have gone for you the last few days, the last couple of weeks, the last few months, the last couple of years. And in terms of being a responsible human being and an adult, it's kind of a cool thing to say, I'm going to learn from those. There's instruction that I can get from this sort of a process where I'm thinking about me, I'm thinking about my life, the context of who I've been, what my goals are, stated and unstated, what I'm happy with, stated and unstated. That when you put all of that stuff together and you start thinking of it in terms of, it's almost, for getting ready for conversations, especially ones that are important, it's almost like putting your power suit on. And what I mean is you want to have something that's made out of Teflon, maybe a little, Kevlar there in case there's slings and arrows and bullets. But seriously, you want to take a minute or two and kind of condition your own mind and be open to whatever may come, so that it's not going to create a thrown situation where all you're doing now is emotionally reacting to something. Now, I don't know if you got a thought about that. It looks to me like there's light bulbs going off over your head, Lisa.
Oh, well, only because I get these funny thoughts in my head because not that long ago I played Mrs. Incredible at Halloween, so
Nice.
I did the power stance because that's the only way that unitard looked well.
Good for you. Good for you. So have you had the power stance training?
No, you know what, I haven't had, not specifically. I know I've seen it in places where you use it because it works. I mean, it has some sort of.
It's a really wonderful thing to teach children. There are two, and as I understand it, the way I saw it modeled in a TED Talk was to stand in these one of two poses for 2 full minutes.
Oh.
And what they found was, and we'll describe the poses first. The first one is with your feet parallel to each other, probably about 1.5 feet apart, and then with your shoulders back and your hands made into fists going into your hips, with your chest out, like I am Mitor, or
It's a Superman pose, kind of.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one, and then the other one is the victory with your arms up in the air without jumping up and down, and just hold that pose for 2 minutes. So that's exactly what I'm talking about in terms of getting ready for a conversation. And what difference do psychologists say that little bit of work makes? The difference that the person that I heard the TED Talk by was that most people who do this and they did this with hundreds of people applying for jobs, going in for some type of a performance review, even just meeting groups of people. If they found that if they took people and the control group was told nothing about anything and just go into a new situation, but the people who did the power pose before all of these, what usually are kind of confronting or a little bit upsetting, your heart's pounding walking through the door into this new situation, they fared really well. And the people that interviewed them that didn't know the difference between the different people described the people that they really liked as positive attitude, outgoing, easy to be with, very smart. So all of that came out of 2 minutes of setting yourself up for success, right?
Oh, definitely. Because I was thinking, now I've lost my train of thought, which is horrible.
Well, I'll give you 2 minutes to do the power pose here, okay?
I know, right? Well, no, that's what I was thinking. Because, those studies that show that, your body doesn't know the difference between fear and excitement. So if you're going to a situation that actually makes you feel nervous or scared, and so if you do the power pose, it turns it into sort of excitement, and then that can, translate into being a happier, more confident person wherever, into the situation. And like, I can't wait to meet these people now because I have
Here
the
I
power.
am. This is as good as it gets,
Right? Here I
Nothing to
am.
hide, just you're getting total authenticity and total willingness to be right or wrong, doesn't matter. So the really cool part about that is that's almost too good to keep it a secret.
Mhm.
That's the kind of thing we should be teaching, kindergartners and first graders, and all the teachers, and all the staff, and
Right.
and all the people in the world.
Everyone everywhere.
Well,
The whole world doing a power pose.
no doubt about it. So considering power posing for a moment, each one of these things that we do are kind of like, the lever to the world. And if there's anything that makes human beings feel really great for a moment or two, it generally colors the way things are going to look for the next hour, 2 hours, and increases your capacity for BS, and increases your capacity for being considerate and empathetic and all those sorts of things. Because when you're all powerful and nothing to prove, somehow I guess that makes you a better listener.
Definitely. Because you're not out to prove anything.
Yeah,
Because you know it already.
absolutely. And the neat part of it is these are 100% subjective. There's no objectivity in how this interaction produces an end result where these people are suddenly all those things in the perception of the people that interviewed them, talked with them, allowed them into their group, all that sort of thing. So if you're thinking about it for a moment, uh, it's exactly what's needed for people who want to make change and want to make a difference. There's no need to yell. There's no need to jump up and down. There's no need to call people names.
So I was thinking about something too that I was taught recently, and that could help in consideration is to consider if you can predict it, you can prevent it. So I've used that approach in my emails. Like if I send this, this will happen. Oh, yes, it will. So I'm not going to send that anymore. It's an interesting stopgap kind of thing. Save as draft.
That's definitely being considerate, right?
Right.
You can't make a mistake if you don't send a bad message.
Right.
I mean, sometimes a bad message is what is called for, but for the most part, you want to make sure it's a message that gets received.
Right. Or if it's an action that you do or don't do, and the consequence of either one, basically. I mean, like if you can predict it, you can prevent it. So I mean, I think that's a great live by kind of consideration thing.
I think it's a great truism, okay? But
Mhm.
it's like I predict it's going to be light out tomorrow, or people will have some fun with that. I think the main thing is that, and that's also a lot of fun, Lisa, when you predict something and it doesn't happen. I think the corollary to that axiom, if you can predict it, you can prevent it, and your worst fears are never realized. That is so over a lifetime more true than not.
Right.
More true than not. And while people are considering outcomes and predicting outcomes and spending that time thinking, there's always this thing called, we spent a little bit of time talking about the way of being last time. And that might be along the lines of always being kind. When you start making rules for how you're going to behave in a system or a circumstance or situation, it's very important that some responsibility be built into this whole thing. And it's back to where I was saying before, where you almost have to put your power suit on and get dressed and ready to go out of the house. I don't know many people until COVID that would have ever had a business meeting in their pajamas. And I haven't seen anybody come out since COVID out to a restaurant in their pajamas, although I've wanted to do that